All right, welcome everybody. Glad to see you, Phuntsok. Um, so everyone, welcome to home. Most faces are familiar, but Jane Rose, I'm not sure if I've met you before, so hi, good to have you. Oh, and Ryan's here too. Hey Ryan, good to be getting ever closer to meeting you in person. So welcome to home. This is the space that Phuntsok has been holding the last 3.5 years, I think, something along those lines, where we gather every Wednesday evening, initially at Phuntsok's very home, and now in a digital format, to really come together and try to gain a little bit of wisdom, try to get a little extra sense of how we can be interacting with the world that we're living in, from the vantage point of the experience Phuntsok has had as a monk and practitioner in the Gelugpa lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. This evening, in particular, we're going to be. There's an echo or a fuzz on my side. Oh no! Well, do the best I can with it. Maybe that helps. Maybe that helps. Thanks for pointing it out. So this evening we're going to be sort of continue. I think we've had a couple weeks diving into the real nationwide, if not worldwide, current events. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, starting with a wake-up moment around the coronavirus and how that's permutated in so many different ways, and how it's coming up in Black Lives Matter movement. And it's really been a trigger for us to re-examine a lot of what we've taken for granted in our lives, and what we've just sort of taken as normal in the way that we live. This evening's topic was presented by Miriam. She and I have had a bunch of chats, about everything going on in the world pretty regularly, and we do our best to try to pick up the lessons in it. But this particular spot was a little extra sticky, and I did what I could to try to give a basic run through of it in the email. But I think the real gist of it is we have this whole history in this country that's really explicit sometimes about between oppressors and oppressed, sort of dualistic interaction, and the identities that get grafted onto us as we play that out. And in particular, the part that's been difficult is seeing how even the victories don't always end up feeling like victories after a certain amount of time. They seem to hollow out, and we're stuck in the year 2020 fighting along the same lines that has been fought for a very, very long time. And I love what this did. I wish I had found a way to put it in the email, but I love the way where it was really distinguishing this idea between relative freedom and ultimate freedom. And I think that's the distinction we're going to be diving into tonight. Distinguishing between the idea of being relatively free, being more free than we once were, or more free than someone else, and distinguishing that from the goal in Buddhism of being ultimately free. A kind of freedom that doesn't increase or decrease, or a kind of freedom that's not comparable to anything. A kind of freedom that is just free. And to even approach that, we have to look at what is the hook of relative freedom that we keep biting onto. We keep settling to just have a society, have a world, have a life that's more free than it was. But if we're only settling for something that's more free than it was, or more free than it could be, we end up getting pulled back to the starting point. That hook just kind of grabs us, and here we are again, just living out the same game for the umpteenth time, the millionth time, infinite time. So that, I think, is the trick in the moment, and particularly in this moment, but in searching for kind of ultimate freedom that Buddhism offers us a path. So Phuntsok will be guiding us through that, leading first in a meditation, and then a lecture. And then we'll have some time for questions after that, and we'll close out with another dedication and meditation. And with that, Phuntsok, I will hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. How's my voice coming out? Is it the same thing or? Okay, all right. Okay. So let's just get into the meditation first. First, bring into conscious awareness that you're going to enter meditation and have some understanding in your mind as to what this means. What is the meditation state and why would you want to enter into that state? Bring these to conscious awareness. At least have some understanding that the meditative state is natural to the mind. And it's not something we have to force the mind to be, but it's rather we have to allow the mind to be. And as we are meditating, what we are doing, we are allowing more and more, more and more. And as we allow more and more, we experience the natural state more deeper and deeper. Just hold that understanding in the back of your mind. Also, the reason why you would want to enter meditation. And as you hold this in your mind, it's as if you're communicating this to all of your being, to your body, to your energy, to your emotions, to your mind. And allow all these parts of you to respond to this intention to enter meditation. In this way, you make contact with the natural intelligence that is within the body and allow that intelligence to guide you as far as how should you place the body. Allow that intelligence to guide you how to place the legs so they can be stable and comfortable. How to place the torso so the spine can be upright, give you attentiveness while being stable and comfortable. For the arms and shoulders to be relaxed, even for the head and neck to be centered, for the mouth, teeth, tongue to rest in their natural places. So you can now feel a natural resting of the muscles of the face and forehead. Finally, allow the eyes to rest softly. Rest softly, for the eyes can be closed, can be halfway open, Can be fully open, looking straight ahead. Whatever feels like a resting place for your eyes, you bring your eyes to that place and you let them rest. Even now, after familiarity with the meditative state, you should start to feel that through the body, you're entering in the meditative state already. You're starting to taste the meditation state. The signs, the early signs are a sense of calm, a pleasantness arising within the body. Align your mind, align your attention to those experiences. Welcome them, rejoice in them, celebrate their presence. As you continue to allow them to make the presence more and more felt, more and more felt, more and more present. There's a part of the mind that holds onto the body unconsciously, wanting to protect the body, not wanting to let the body go. So to assure that part of the mind that the body is safe, feel the contact between your body and your seat. Feel the sense of stability your seat is giving you. Feel the sense of comfort. And once you make direct contact with that sensation of your body being held and supported, then that part of your mind can relax and it can stop holding the body and you can deliberately just let go. And usually sometimes when you do that, you may notice that the body sink a little bit into the cushion, almost as if you were holding your body up and then you let it go. And this should give you a deeper sense of going into that calm, going into that pleasantness. And continue to welcome it, continue to celebrate when this calm and this pleasantness continue to enhance and deepen. That is like an anchor or plumb helping you to go even deeper into that space of calm and pleasantness, which are signs that you're entering meditation, signs that you're approaching the natural state of the mind, which is what we want, which is what we seek, consciously and unconsciously. Having reassured ourselves of the stability and comfort of the body, now gently scan the body, beginning with the legs, and we continue to rejoice, continue to celebrate as you now make direct contact with those same signs in those very places that you are now isolating and making direct contact with. The legs, contact, acknowledge, rejoice, let go. Notice the deeper sense of calm. Celebrate that, rejoice in that. Then bring the light of awareness to the torso, from the hips to the shoulders, the abdomen, the chest, the back, the spine. Make direct contact with the sense of calm there, the pleasantness there. Rejoice, welcome them, celebrate them, and let go. Notice the enhancement. Rejoice in the enhancement. Now bring the light of awareness to the shoulders, to the arms and hands. Deliberately notice the letting go. Notice the calm, the pleasantness. Celebrate them, welcome them, let go. And each time you let go, notice the calm enhances, the pleasantness enhances, and the inner and the other sensations, the other signs of being entering the meditative state are enhancing. Notice them, continue to rejoice in them. Now make direct contact with the signs in the head and neck as they rest. The mouth, teeth, tongue. Contact, rejoice, let go, rejoice. The muscles of the face, contact, celebrate, let go, rejoice. The eyes, as they rest in their natural places, make contact with a palpable sense of calm and pleasantness in the eyes, to whatever measure that they are present. Celebrate them and let the eyes go. And notice the overall enhancement and welcome that, celebrate that, rejoice. Now gently bring attention to the breath. And you may start to notice the very same signs in the very act of breathing itself. A pleasantness in the very mechanism of breathing. A sense of calming. Welcome them, rejoice in them. Now the commitment breath. In through the nose, gently, fully, breathe in. Staying connected to the signs. And through the mouth, just release. And as you release, let go, let go, let go in the body. Notice as you're letting go that you're going deeper into the signs. Rejoice that you're going deeper into the signs. Keep letting go, keep letting go. Notice the momentum of letting go. Stay in that momentum. Leave the breath alone and just stay in that momentum. Stay in that momentum like a plane taking off, and it uses a lot of energy just to get into a certain space. And once you get into that space and it's cruising, you just stay there. You don't have to apply that same energy anymore to continue to stay in the space, to continue to go deeper into that space. Just stay in that space, stay in that momentum, relax, let go, and be joyfully curious about the experience that is taking place. And rejoicing in the signs that may be very faint in the beginning, but rejoice in their presence. So there might be some energetic experience that is palpable that you can feel through the sense of touch, or you might feel through some other senses. It might be a sound, it might be a vision, it might be a color, it might be lights, whatever it is. Acknowledge them as signs of going deeper, deeper into that space of meditation, which means you're getting closer and closer to the fundamental nature, which means we are at this moment accessing and abiding in ever subtle and more subtle and more subtle levels of consciousness. And knowing that these are powerful means to bring about transformation. Stay in that momentum. Now let's stabilize and even go a bit deeper into that space of calm and pleasantness and clarity and radiance, and focus through the nose, a nice deep breath. Breathe in, staying connected. And breathe out. And go deeper into that space, deeper into that calm, deeper into that pleasantness. Stay in that depth as you breathe in again through the nose. Stay there, keep being aware. And again, let go. Notice any enhancement, rejoice, stay in the depth for the third and last time. Another full breath in through the nose. And through the mouth again, let go. And let the breath come back all by itself. Don't force the breath to come back. And don't hold the breath from coming back. If the breath pauses for a little bit, let it pause for a little bit. And just watch it. And when it comes back by itself, and just be with it when it comes back. And all the while, staying connected to the space of calm, pleasantness, knowing that the space of calm will become utter peace, knowing that the quality of that pleasantness will become utter joy. And these very sensations that you're having are pointing to the natural clarity, spaciousness of the mind, and the natural luminosity of awareness. That's what's making these very sensations vivid and present and distinct. And gently staying in that space, raise your attention to the space in front of you at the level of your eyebrows. You may start to feel a kind of physiological sensation in the forehead. Once you notice it, acknowledge it, know it to be just a natural sign. With your attention there, begin to consider that within us that is calling us, whose voice we cannot deny, and yet we are not able to have a clear vision of this. And yet its call is undeniable. And just stay being aware of that presence. It's calling us to something that is deeply felt. And from a deep place we know is extremely meaningful. But not the kind of meaningfulness that would give you a sense of anxiety, but rather the very calm will enhance in that meaning. The pleasant will enhance in that meaning. Just stay there, knowing it is calling us to something meaningful. By acknowledging its presence, we are guided, we are protected. And direct a sense of deep respect towards that, deep trust and gratitude. If it is already appearing, continue to perceive its luminous presence. If it's not, then begin to sense it and feel it and see it as a luminous presence. It is our potential individually and our potential collectively. And sense us forming a circle, being connected to this presence, which is at the same time our individual potential and our collective potential. And understand every concern that you have, whatever the concern may be. Even if you consider it to be, oh, this is not a concern, to be, it's not worthy of being a concern. Whatever the concern may be, whether it is deeply felt and unconscious, or it is at the surface of your mind, kind of conscious, kind of a concern. Understand that through this presence, all concerns will be addressed. No concerns will be denied, will be ignored. So have that sense. And with that, open yourself, open your mind to the guidance that is always there for you. Open your mind, open your life to the protection that is always there for you, without having to abstract, without having to imagine what it could be, what it should be. Just go to the very depth of what you feel that is undeniable, and just stay connected with that. And just stay open, without expectation of receiving something right here, right now, or tomorrow. Just being open for whenever, for now, or next year even. And just stay in that presence and keep relaxing. Keep yourself open to that within us is calling us towards meaning, to make our life meaningful. Our individual potential, our collective potential. Just stay with that for a few moments. Just receiving. And keeping that in mind, knowing that throughout this session tonight, it is that collective voice. It is through that the ears of that collective us that we are listening. It is from that collective voice that what is being said is coming from. Not that it is, but consider it that way. So that no matter what's going on, understand it through that collective us. Okay, get yourself ready to come out of the meditation. Sensing the space of that you are indeed within the meditative state, the calm, the measure of pleasantness in the body, in the breath, and the mind. The inner sensations, knowing that they're pointing to the mind's clarity, the natural radiance. Witnessing them, rejoice. Staying connected to that luminous presence that is both our individual potential and our collective potential, without that being any contradiction whatsoever. And with that, let us arise from the meditation. A nice deep breath in through the nose, feel it, hear it, and out the mouth. And gently reconnect with your immediate surroundings. Feel your surroundings through your sense of touch, being aware of the temperature again, being aware of the feel of the clothing on you, being aware of the different sounds, and slowly let your eyes take in colors, light, shapes. Okay. When he was known as Siddhartha Gautama, he was looking for something you could say existentially meaningful. And it was so important for him to find it that he set out, leaving everything behind. Now, what was it that was within him that would tell him that, okay, finally, this is it, this is what you're looking for, if it's something that he has not yet encountered? But something within him was able to help him make that discernment. What you're looking for, you haven't found it yet. Keep searching. What you're looking for, this is not it. Keep searching. And he finally arrived at an experience, and this inner commentator, this inner gauge, this inner discernment was able to confirm, was able to validate, yes, this is it. This is what you've been looking for. Yes, now you have finally, you have found it. And then he became known as Buddha Shakyamuni after that experience. And what did he encounter that were that appeared to have been what he could have been looking for? He encountered different teachers who taught different methods, who thought that this experience is what you were looking for. It's the freedom that you're looking for. And upon, without, you say, without disrespect, followed these advice. They seem to make sense, first of all, and he followed them, and then he experienced the full experience of what they promised. And something within him told him, no, that's not it. This is not what you're looking for. And how, the question that we should ask is, how did he know that wasn't it? If it wasn't something that he hasn't found yet, if it's something that he's looking for that he has not yet experienced. So the freedom that we are looking for, the liberation that we're looking for, why are we looking for it? Are we looking for it, first of all? I have to tell you that every single one of us is looking for it. And when we, along the way, along that journey, we encounter things that seems to be the liberation. And if we're not careful, if we don't listen to that part within us that is, you could say, that sent us out looking for that freedom in the first place, if we toss it aside and just take this, which appears to be the freedom, and we just stick with that, then we are only deceiving ourselves. And we make the entire journey almost useless, or a waste of time. All the energy, all the effort that we put in up to arrive at this point and to sort of settle for what we have arrived at without it being the true goal that we are seeking, the freedom that we are seeking, then it is like spitting on all the efforts that all the energy that you have expended in the past, that you have expended up to that point. Okay, you are giving yourself the highest disrespect, so to speak. Okay. The liberation is one of the hallmarks, you could say, one of the main things that it is how within Buddhism, how the end goal is coined. It's coined liberation. So every effort that is done within the path is a means of arriving at this liberation. And this is something that we want from the depth of our being. We want that liberation. And sometimes we want that liberation so desperately that in this desperation, we might mislead ourselves and end up settling. Like, I want this so desperately, I'm willing to settle for a lookalike. Because I feel that I don't have the means within me to have the actual thing. So I'll settle for a lookalike. I'll settle for something that resembles it. I'll settle for something that seems to be like it. Because, and at the same time, it's a very strange thing. It's a thing that we are both admiring the goal, and then we are seeing ourselves as being not worthy of the goal of liberation. Because we're not worthy of it, and we admire it, and we don't see that we have the capacity within us to actually achieve it, then all that is left is some kind of admiration. So we are willing to settle for a picture of it. We're willing to settle for something that looks like it. But when we settle for something that looks like it, it's not that we are telling ourselves consciously, oh, this is only looks like it, and I'll settle for it. What we end up doing ourselves a great deception. We make ourselves believe that we have finally found it, because that voice within us that is crying for this freedom will not stop crying for this freedom until we find it. So what we end up doing this miraculous, almost gymnastic of making ourselves believe that this is the freedom that we've been looking for. And we ascribe to it all kinds of or all kinds of qualities that it doesn't have, because we know that's what the freedom, those are the qualities that the freedom is supposed to have. So we tell ourselves, oh, this has it, this has it, this has it, even though directly we're not experiencing them. Okay. So this is more or less a ultimate kind of liberation that we are seeking. But on the way there, we have to have a taste, we have to have an experience of what that liberation could be like. And that's where we encounter what you might refer to as relative liberation. Relative liberation. And there are two ways to understand the relative liberation. Okay. Relative liberation in a sense of whatever the circumstances where we feel an absence of liberation, and when those circumstances are alleviated, then it gives us a sense of liberation. Okay. And this is relative liberation. It's relative in a sense that it is a kind of liberation that is that transforms, that changes in the sense that a little liberation, a little less liberation, a little more liberation, a little less liberation, but it's not really that full sense of liberation. And I'm gonna, and the reason I'm mentioning this ultimate liberation is not some abstract to put somewhere and then now let's deal with real stuff. This ultimate liberation is exactly what we are looking for in what we think we are experiencing in the relative liberation. And settling for this relative liberation is in a sense telling ourselves this relative liberation is that ultimate liberation. What we are looking for from the very beginning is this ultimate liberation. And in seeking that liberation, we do things that at least on an unconscious level, at a spontaneous level, we believe will get us to that liberation. And unfortunately, we are guided mainly by misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is guiding us, guiding our search, is guiding our journey towards liberation. And of course, if misunderstanding is guiding our search, then we will end up with a false liberation, with a false sense of freedom. And I'm using the word liberation rather than freedom at this point, and I'm going to make the transition to freedom. Because when we think of liberation, at least within the context of spirituality, then we think of a spiritual kind of liberation. But the term freedom itself, it may have more of a social connotation to it, but it's the same thing. It's probably at some level, it's the same word describing the same thing. And liberation from what? Liberation from what? Freedom from what? There's this beautiful documentary that I have not watched fully, but I've seen the excerpts of it. I think it happened sometime after, I think sometime in early 1900s or something, or 1950s or something like that. I don't remember exactly when, but it was this, I'm going to have to use these terms, these very relative terms that we are very attached to, unfortunately. This white person was interviewing ex-black slaves in the United States. Okay, and there was something that struck him, and then he mentioned it. You probably have seen it or something, but I'm going to paraphrase. And there's something very striking in this conversation where is sort of as a person of conscience, this white person feels that these people who are not experiencing full liberation that he's experiencing should have that. And I forget exactly how he asked the question, but he asked the question in such a way that about how does this gentleman feel that he's now being given liberation? And then he responded by saying, that's the disease that you people have, he said. Who do you think you are to think that you can give me liberation? You can take my liberation from me, but you cannot give it to me. Because liberation is, everyone has it by nature. So we can do things to each other to stop one another to experience the liberation, but the liberation is something that we give. So in that sense, it has a very strong similarity to this ultimate liberation. So this ultimate liberation is not a gift that you give to yourself. It's not a gift that somebody gives to you, but rather it is your nature. You're already free. That is our deepest nature. It is just a matter of claiming it. It's a matter of abiding in it. So when we are not liberated, we are keeping ourselves from that liberation. We are doing something to make ourselves not experience our nature as it should be. Okay, so it was very interesting the way he answered the question. It was like saying, "Oh, it's wonderful that the government is giving me liberation," but he said, oh, "Who is the government to think that they can give me liberation?" As if it's something that they've manufactured in their factories, and now they're going out to see who's worthy of receiving this thing that they've just created in their factory. Okay. So this is a relative way of understanding this ultimate liberation. Okay, and to make the connection between what seems to be an abstract liberation and a very practical kind of liberation. Okay, there should be no laws granting people liberation. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There shouldn't be such laws. It's like somebody making a law. Okay, now you can go, you can eat. Now you can have breakfast. Now it's a law, you can have breakfast. Now it's a law, you can, I don't know, go to the bathroom. Okay, this is already part of your nature. No one needs to dictate that, but they can make laws stopping people from doing something, right? And of course, we have to take into consideration the restraining from someone from allowing their what seems to be restraining someone's liberation, which is actually restraining their bondage. I'm going to explain that. Okay, what are vows, for example, the spiritual vows, or commitments of ethics, commitments of morality? They're not restricting your freedom, but rather they're liberating you. What they are restricting is an aspect of freedom, actually, but an aspect of freedom where what we are doing with that freedom is encaging ourselves, enchaining ourselves. And since this is something that is happening at a spontaneous level, something that is happening through the force of habit, we've gotten into the habit of enchaining ourselves. We got into the habit of encaging ourselves, and we don't seem to know any better than when we are spontaneously acting, we are simply continuing this habit energy. So it seems like when you're given, when you're following some ethical rule, some moral rule, what you're doing is stopping your freedom, But what you're actually doing, you're stopping this momentum, this habit energy that all it's doing is entrapping you. All it's doing. Excuse me a moment. Oh. Sorry about that. I thought I had this thing off. Yeah, so we have created where we are thinking that we are expressing freedom, but what we are actually doing, we are enchaining ourselves. We are enslaving ourselves. We are encaging ourselves. Okay? And this is a false sense of freedom. This is a kind of relative freedom that we can, in a practical way, understand in the term relative freedom here. Okay. And all this is because we are searching for this ultimate freedom. Remember, this freedom that is part of our nature. We are searching for it, and because we have a misunderstanding guiding us, a misunderstanding driving us, all we can rely on is this habit energy, misunderstanding of what freedom should be. And instead of taking ourselves to freedom, we are essentially encaging ourselves even further, tightening the cage, tightening the noose, so to speak. And because of that, on the way to freedom, we have to restrain this habit energy. We have to restrain this habit energy. And the way to begin this is to just basically have to admit to ourselves, I don't fully understand this freedom that I'm looking for. I don't fully understand what are the means that actually will get me there. I have a hint about certain things that will get me there, but I don't fully understand. But this is the habit that's been carrying me forward so far. And let me put a question mark on this. Let me test to see if this is something that's actually taking me to freedom. Let me have a sense of a hesitation, a sense of doubt about these habits that seems to be going towards freedom. Let me put a doubt on them. Maybe they're not taking me to freedom. Maybe they're actually encaging me further in this very sense of needing to be free. This very sensation, this very feeling that I'm having that makes me want to feel free. Maybe these habits that I have are actually enforcing this sense of freedom, this sense of lacking freedom. Okay. And as we begin to have this kind of understanding, we begin to hesitate to take a certain action. We begin to hesitate to speak certain things. We begin to hesitate to think certain things. It's a good position to be. And sometimes it could be detrimental, where we should have acted where we're not acting. We should have spoken where we haven't spoken. And we should have thought something we haven't spoken. And this is just the interim state where we are assessing, we are trying to discriminate. Okay, yeah, this will lead to freedom. This will not lead to freedom. As we're doing that, we will make mistakes where we acted where we should have not acted, where we didn't act when we should have acted. Okay, so that is to be understood. And when I'm saying that is to be understood, not just at the individual level, but that is, you have to understand that at every level, everyone is in that. It's not that you are you're the only one who is not free and everyone else is free, and somehow they're using their freedom to keep you not free. Everyone is in this cage together. Okay. Some people are simply in different pockets of the cage, but they're still in the cage. Okay, we are all in this cage together. And some people in their misunderstanding of freedom, in their misunderstanding of what to do to get themselves to freedom, they have this misunderstanding that, oh, this person is keeping me from freedom. I must take away their freedom from them so that I can have my freedom. As though freedom is something that, is something that can be dealt with in that situation. Okay, and that's when you encounter societies where you have those in power, so to speak, holding or feeling that it is their responsibility to hold back freedom from certain people, to hold certain people from engaging in certain actions. And I'm going to say something that's going to sound, I don't know how it's going to come out, but get ready for that one. This might be a doozy, okay? Groups of people restricting the freedom of other groups of people has always been around. For as long as we've evolved, we've left the pure animal state behind, and we have evolved to social animals, cultural animals, societal animals. Ever since we have evolved with that, and we've gone, unfortunately, this evolution has made us feel, and and again, it has its evolutionary purpose, okay? For this group to protect itself, because its evolution has given that group, has given individuals a sense of being able to discriminate. Oh, that's good to eat, that's not good to eat. And that has evolved, that has been incorporated within societies where it's no longer just that's good to eat, that's not good to eat, but rather that's good for me and that's not good for me, that's good for us, that's not good for us. Basically applying the same level of discrimination, this is good to eat, this is not good to eat, and then thinking that somehow this applies completely in the same way, with the same level of urgency as this is good to eat, this is not good to eat, as in this is good for me and this is not good for me. Somehow applying it that way, where this group of people see the other group of people as if they're looking at poison. And they see this group of people as if they're looking at some bounty food or something, okay? And it comes from that evolution, from that evolution of simply being able to make a distinction. Yes, that's good to eat, that's not good to eat, which is absolutely a necessity. Okay, but we are evolving, we are sort of becoming more and more sophisticated, and we don't fully understand. It's like we are toddlers or something, trying to understand these adult things and trying to implement them. Okay, so this group of people feel that in order for them to feel more free, they have to restrict this other group of people of their freedom. And this is something that consciously, in order for that group of people to do, they have to understand that this is not something I would like to be done to me. So that means, in a deep sense, they know they are being immoral. In a deep sense, they know that they're being unethical, because this is the golden rule. This is the fundamental rule of morality and ethics. If you don't want it to be done to you, don't do it to someone else. That's just, you don't have to wait for Confucius to come to tell us that in order for us to understand that. That's something that is ingrained within us, okay? So when one group feels that for their survival, in order for them to achieve their sense of freedom, because of their myopic, because of their misunderstanding, their ignorance of this very nature that is driving them, they feel that since this group is poison to us, we must restrict them the freedoms that we have. And this group can be, and I'm gonna get to it, the doozy, okay? And then we have to have a way of being able to distinguish this group from that group. There has to be some something that it is immediate for us to be able to say, oh yeah, that's that group, that's that group, okay? So this group wears a certain shade in their, I don't know, a certain makeup. They wear their clothes a certain way. They have a certain color that they emphasize. And that's when it seems like they all look the same, right? As far as globally speaking, right? So you have Europeans distinguishing each other. Oh, that's it. Those are Italians. Those are French. Those are Spanish. And before they became French, before they became Spanish, before they became English, they were like they were Franks. There were Anglos. There were Saxons. There were that. So eventually, homogenizing, and then becoming English. Homogenizing, becoming French. But before that, they were, oh, those are the this and this and that person, and then that's the poison, and we have to restrict freedom from them. And then they would restrict freedom from each other. Eventually, became the homogeny that we see in the world today. Okay, but still restricting freedom, trying to restrict freedom from each other. The kind of freedom, the kind of thing that they feel that if I don't have this, I would not be free. But if they have it, my freedom is in jeopardy, so I have to take it away from them. Okay, and it benefits me. Then eventually, this very same thing, this group taking away the freedom of this group, now the capacity to make the distinction between the group is very stark, is very evident. It's undeniable from the appearance of it. Now you have Europeans arriving in the Americas, and now there's a very striking difference. They don't just look like the French or the Italians, they look completely different. And you have to go to that far land. And then, oh yeah, they look completely different from us. They look completely different from us. Then it's easier for us to say other this way. And since other are the ones that we have to restrict their freedom so that our freedom is not in jeopardy, so that freedom is done. But it's not, and doesn't mean, and I'm sorry to give this kind of non-spiritual thing, but there's a spiritual thing behind it, okay? It seems not to be spiritual. Remember, we're all in a cage. We're all in a cage. The purpose of the details in the cage is to keep the cage a cage, to keep everyone in the cage. It's like the wardens set up systems for how the prisoners should behave toward each other so that they remain in the prison. Okay, the very construct of the cage of samsara is such that it keeps us in the cage of samsara. So seeing this thing which seems to be very natural. Oh, look, I can see that's good to eat. That's not good to eat. Oh, now this is now more sophisticated. This is different from me. And I can make that not good to eat. I can make this one good to eat. I could make them at the same level of urgency. Okay. Now here's the thing that's gonna shock you. When in the, and this is something you have to consider, a lot of components are coming together, right? It's not that we are all sticking, it's not that things are not changing. Things are constantly changing. Things are constantly changing. Moving forward, things are constantly changing. We are able to get there faster than we used to get before, okay? All these things are changing, constantly changing. And now, because the capacity of the distinction is so striking, And that is now incorporated into this thing where this group and that group takes away the freedom from the other. And homogeny is taking place where people are able to, because of the fluidity of identity, Saxons and Anglos are able to now homogenize and become English. Okay. And English and French and Spanish and Italians are able to homogenize and call themselves Europeans. And what I'm about to say is to address the question, a part of the question that Miriam was asking about the relativity of freedom, especially about the relativity of freedom, in a sense of, because when you think of freedom, you think of relativity, you think of interdependence. You think of, because this depends on that in order for that to be. And in trying to understand things which are very sophisticated, like the idea of duality, for example, as presented in Tao Te Ching, sorry for digressing a little bit, the idea of, because of light, darkness, and so on and so forth. But this kind of relativity is not to be applied in an absolute way. Okay. The existence of light is not dependent on the existence of, what I say, light or darkness, whichever one. Okay. The existence of light is not dependent on the existence of darkness. That is not what the relativity is talking about. The relativity of light and dark is, the darkness is relative to the light is relative to the darkness. Okay, not their existence is coming from the other. Okay, and the reason I'm saying this, you have to go back to that gentleman who was interviewed about, oh, they're going to give you your freedom. How do you feel about that? What kind of silly thing you're saying, telling me you're going to give me my freedom? You're going to give me the fact that I'm a person? You're going to give my personhood to me? I'm already a person. Freedom is already part of my nature. Okay? So freedom, the existence of freedom, is not dependent on the existence of bondage. That is not the relativity that is being spoken of here, okay? When they're talking about them being relative. In the sense of, because you have bondage, now you can have freedom. Don't understand it that way, okay? The only, just like light and dark, what is darkness? The absence of light. Or you can say, what is light? You can even say, if you want to, the absence of darkness, if you want to put it that way. So, but I'm saying it this way relative to freedom and bondage, okay? Freedom is the absence of bondage. When there is no more bondage, that very natural state appears, and we call that natural state, the absence of that bondage, freedom. When freedom is not being experienced, it's not that somehow freedom transformed itself or something into bondage, and now you have bondage, okay? It's not that bondage somehow transforms itself and now it becomes freedom, okay? And nirvana, this kind of freedom, is the absence of samsara. When samsara is no longer there, then you have nirvana. If you don't have nirvana, then you have samsara, okay? The relativity is in a sense of relative to one another, right? But not their existence is depending on the other. And the reason I have to say that is sort of understand, like, yes, there is a journey that we are going through, and the journey is painful, and the journey is through the muck of bondage. And it seems like it's the bondage itself that is slowly transforming into freedom. But that is not the case. It's not that bondage is slowly transforming itself to freedom. Okay. All right. And remember, this was a digression to the thing I wanted to say. If this was a big thing for you, that's not the big thing I was gonna. That's not the big thing. Here's the big thing. So you have this social group and that social group in their own little pockets, developing this sense of discrimination, the sense of this fear, I'm going to lose my freedom if I don't restrain that group over there from having their freedom. And this is going all over the place. This is going on the entire, in every corner of the planet. This game is being carried out. Okay, to the point where it becomes normal. It becomes so normal that you have a lot of religious texts normalizing it, because it's normal, because people have been doing it for so long. It's seems to be part of evolution, so it's just normalized. What groups doing that to each other, right? And in order for this group to strip away the freedom of the other group, remember this immoral thing that they have to do, and it's unconsciously immoral. And how do they deal with this unconscious immoral thing? How do they stop their conscience from murdering them? They have to do this perceptual gymnastic where they actually make themselves see the other as not completely different from them, as if being an absolute other. So taking away their freedom, there's nothing wrong with that, because I've somehow conditioned myself to see it as there's nothing wrong. I have somehow bypassed my conscience. And I have to do this because my conscience would kill me if I were to see any kind of me in the other. So I have to see the other as an absolute other. Okay, so take that into consideration. And because of that, and whether it is the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas and the other groups treating the what are they called? The supposedly the lowest caste, right? Supposedly the lowest caste. So they have to address their conscience, because at the deep level, they know that this is me. This is no different from me. And to sort of bypass this, to sort of address this, they have to trick themselves into some kind of doctrine, some sort of dogma that says, oh, that is what is supposed to happen to them. I am supposed to take away their freedom. It is the righteous thing to do to take away their freedom. If I don't take away their freedom, that would be immoral for me. So they have to somehow trick themselves to make that a reality for them. And that's what's happened. That's what happened in India. That's what happened in China. That's what happened in every culture, in every place where humanity evolved into some sort of society. You see that happen. Okay. The Bambaras in West Africa did it to some, I don't know, to Igbo. I'm not even sure if that's correct or not, but I'm sure that happened somewhere. In the Native Americans, the different groups, the Incas did it to whoever, that sense of this is me and that's them. Okay, now I'm mandated to take away their freedom. As a matter of fact, it's my duty to do so, and so on and so forth, right? So this is happening. This is normal. This is normalized. And this has been normalized for thousands and thousands of years, where that individual who's caught up in that kind of cycle, freedom is almost impossible. Because that individual is indoctrinated to accept their fate, their lot as ordained by heaven. It's supposed to be that way. For you to fight against it, you're fighting against heaven. But you know, that thing within you that makes you seek for freedom tells you, no, it can't be, because that there's something within me that tells me that's not true. There's something within me that tells me to look for freedom. Look for the freedom that you have, that you're enjoying. Okay, so there's this constant moral battle with all members of society, those who are the oppressed and the oppressors. They're all struggling with this moral, this cage, because the one who encages the other has to become the warden of the cage. You have to now stand and make yourself now the warden of that cage. You can't just make a cage and then leave behind and let. You have to now spend energy to holding onto the cage. Okay. And the reason I'm taking a long time to get to this, because it's gonna be a biggie. Okay, so this was normalized all over the place, and until the distinction between, oh look, you look very different from me. I can do this now in such a way where it's there's no confusion. There's no confusion anymore. Oh, I thought you were Italian. I was looking for a French guy. Okay. There's no confusion anymore. The appearance takes away the confusion. Okay. To be able to make an absolute other. And because we had to basically make ourselves, this is the person I was referring to, James Baldwin, who made that statement. When members of society engage in that, allows that to continue to happen, we become moral monsters. We become moral monsters, okay? And I'm not talking about moral monster who's, you know, with, you know, big teeth and things like that, right? It looks very normal. As a matter of fact, it looks very, this is what's been going on. I don't see anything wrong with it. That's what's been going on for thousands of years, right? Now the danger that was from the very beginning, don't you make other out of anyone. Rather, that evolutionary need that makes you seek social group, you should expand it. Don't let your fear make you misinterpret or misuse the necessary evolutionary need. That's food, that's not food. Don't mix them up, okay? Don't mix them up. Because if you mix them up, thousands of years later, what are you going to do? You're going to become absolute moral monsters. And that's what ended up being in the Americas. That's what ended up being in the world. Absolute moral monsters came into existence. Okay. And this is where, and that's not the shocking thing. The shocking thing is, thank goodness for the moral monsters. Because if it wasn't for the demonstration of the limit where this kind of thinking could be expressed in, where as a game, a human being will take another human being just for sport, and actually absolutely have fun doing it, to just for the sport of it, absolutely abuse someone else in the most horrific way whatsoever. Because we have become moral monsters. Now it's normal to do that. Now the other has been tricked. We have tricked ourselves to see an absolute other. So it's okay to do whatever you want to do to the other, especially when they're those distinctively, they have this distinctive appearance of being other. Okay. And thank goodness that this mistake that started thousands of years ago of this group taking the freedom away from this other group, but normalizing it. Thank goodness that it has been brought to its ultimate consummation of moral monstrosity. That that now our conscious cannot bear this anymore. And we had to stop it. We had to stop it all the way. We had to say it is across the board wrong to do. And it's because the immorality of it was allowed to be expressed in its ultimate way, in its ultimate sense, and so that we can have a bare look at this monstrosity that we are creating. Okay. And as a result of that, for the most part, at least it is no longer normal. At least it is no longer normal. Yes, it's happening. I'm not saying, I'm not blind to say that it's no longer happening. Yes, it is happening. Individuals are being restricted from expressing their freedom. And this is happening in so many different ways. And even in the same monstrous way that it was allowed to take place. Yes, it's happening in different parts of the world. It's happening here. It's happening everywhere still. But at least on a collective level, we are saying, no, it's wrong. Which is, and this is not to say, and this is where the bondage and the freedom, the relativity of it, of the interdependence, we might confuse the interdependence here as though, oh, if we didn't have the monstrous way of enslavement, the monstrous way of holding other in bondage, of restricting freedom, we would not have freedom now. The answer to this question, again, goes back to what that gentleman said. Who are you to think that freedom is something you can give me? Okay. Freedom is not something that needs bondage in order for it to exist. Freedom is a natural state. We are restricting ourselves from experiencing it in the ultimate way. Okay. Whenever you're not, in whatever way of existence that you are experiencing, where you're not free, we are holding ourselves back from you could say we are using energy. Freedom, you don't need to use energy to achieve freedom, to have freedom, the ultimate freedom, because it's already your nature. What we are doing, we are using energy to keep ourselves enslaved. We are using energy to keep ourselves in the cage. We build the cage, we build the bars, and we keep strengthening them. We use a lot of energy for that. Okay. To limit ourselves, to make myself so limited that when I go outside, I find myself not able to help. That condition of not being able to help energy is being used for me to feel, to me experience my limit, for me to experience this limitation. Okay. So energy is being used for enslavement. That was the doozy that I mentioned about thank goodness for the absolute immoral monstrosity that we became. Now, going forward, Of course, the fear is not going to just go away all of a sudden. This fear driven by misunderstanding that my freedom is in jeopardy if others have freedom. So I will restrict them from having freedom so I can have freedom. Okay? It's not going to go away. And the conditioning that both sides had to go through, conditioning of imposing and conditioning of absorbing. Okay? It's a two-way thing. The conditioning of imposing, the conditioning of absorbing. We both have to free ourselves from these conditionings. Everyone has to free themselves from these conditionings. Okay. And the way to move forward, to understand that from the very early stages, what we've been looking for all along is a natural state called freedom. And it is our journey, unfortunately guided by misunderstanding, that has brought us here to this bondage, to this further bondage. But if we understand that, it's not the bondage that we were looking for. The bondage is just a byproduct of our misunderstanding in our effort to find freedom. But rather, I am in bondage. The oppressor is in bondage. The oppressed is in bondage. We are all in bondage. Okay. It is the duty of the oppressed to let the oppressor know that the oppressor is being an oppressor. And it is the duty of the oppressor to understand oppressing is not the means to achieve freedom. Okay. So we have a duty towards each other. And the duty towards each other is this. We are one family seeking one thing. And we are caught up in a cage of delusion that is making us see each other in such a way that we keep ourselves in the cage. And on the way to this absolute freedom, to this true liberation, understand that the real warden of this cage is misunderstanding. It is misunderstanding being carried out by our afflictions. Those are the wardens of our cage, and we are all under their power. And when you encounter someone, and this is gonna be something gonna sound very direct in terms of what's happening right now, but more like an example. We're all looking for freedom. Remember that. And unfortunately, some of us are more under the heavy weight of ignorance than others. Those of us who are under the heavy sway of ignorance, other is more pronounced than within some other group. Like I would say in our group, I'm sorry, maybe I'm biased. In our group, the sense of other is not as pronounced. As a matter of fact, I would say almost incomparable in the way it is so pronounced with others, right? And anyway, I'm saying us and an other. Okay. So the idea of other is so pronounced in a sense of absolute other. And if absolute other exists, there you better protect yourself from absolute other. But since absolute other is a delusion, then I will continue to carry out my delusion. So the person who sees absolute other is seeking freedom. Remember that. And in their world, they're convinced what they're doing is leading to freedom. What they're doing is leading to the good. And if you can connect with that in them, and that is something that we all share, if you can connect with them through that, then we can sort of begin to break apart this delusion that they are under the power of. They begin to take away the power of that delusion that makes them see absolute other. They start to see themselves when we first understand that. And this is something that is, I mentioned examples of this, somebody mentioned their name, sorry, I forgot their names. This lady and then this gentleman, this lady, she's from Muslim country, and she actually goes to hate groups and interviews them, let them be themselves. And then through that interaction, they start to say, wait a minute, that's me there too. You know, you're no longer other who's a Muslim, other. And they start to, and that start to break, right? What I'm saying is, even when someone would lie to themselves, and this, the term being a racist, right? Even if they lie to themselves and say, I am racist, I'm proud of it. In their mind, they believe it is the good thing to do. They are caught up in that preliminary development of societies that says, oh, that group over there, that's poison. They're caught up in that. Okay. In search of freedom, they're caught up in that. And they believe that their freedom is somehow in jeopardy. And they have to hold on to that. Okay. And that's somebody who would consciously come out and say it. But for the most part, people who behave in a way that you could say racist, people who are, who speak and act, they would not come out and say, I am racist. They would not come out and say that. Because somewhere within them, they know the immoral implications of that. And no one wants to deliberately be immoral. Okay. There are, you could say, I'm gonna say it, it's gonna sound a bit funny, so be ready to laugh. In the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, the Buddha says, even the cow is seeking nirvana. Even the cow is seeking liberation. Okay, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use it with the example that I'm saying. So that when you're like, if you encounter a cow and there's a sense of otherness between you and him and the cow. And if you remember, oh, even the cow is looking for liberation. Okay, then you start to break that barrier of otherness. You start to feel a sense of common beingness with the cow. Now, and this might be easier to do, of course, with a cow than with the example that I'm about to give, but to move forward, understand that we're all caught up in the cage. This is what we have to begin to do. Even the racist is seeking liberation. Okay. And in their action of perpetuating that, in their world, they believe that they're approaching freedom. Okay. And if you can connect with them through that, then we can help each other find our common humanity. And we will expand we will expand what is possible to expand, what nature gave us in terms of being able to see an other and yet see them as part of our family, where what we are actually doing, we are allowing the fluidity of self to expand, where self becomes not just this collection here of bones and blood, but also everywhere there's blood and bone collection. And we are able to see all of them as self. And in the same way, we will take care of this collection of what we call self. We will take care of that self. We will take care of this self. And just like your teeth look very different from your hands look very different from your feet. You don't hate them. You see them, even though you're able to see, that's my hand or that's my feet. That being able to make that distinction doesn't make you say, oh, the hand should hate the feet. My teeth should hate my nose. Because we see them all as part of, we are able to extend the sense of self to include all of them. And the capacity, the potential for the sense of self to be expanded has not yet been found. The limit of it has not yet been found. And we are able to exercise it every day. That's my family. This person was just born the other day. All of a sudden, this person is not part of your family, it's part of yourself. And your family grows now. I have a big family. And they're all part of yourself. Oh, that's my neighbor, now that's part of yourself. That's my friend, that's part of myself. And you go to this country and that country, oh, that's part of myself. You're witnessing the fluidity of self, how it can expand. And the same way your hands look very different from your teeth, and they're not fighting with each other. They're protecting each other, they're helping each other. Even though you look very different from whoever, they can still be part of the same self. And that's the bondage that we have in a very strange way in trying to be sophisticated in our elaborating on what evolution has given us, to be the ability to make distinctions. Instead of using it to further enrich the sense of self, we've limited it. And then we've used it to put us in cages, to put us in bondage. And that's the first freedom we need to, as a society, that's a cage, an enslavement that we have to help each other become free of. That's a relative freedom that is necessary. And it will be an expression of the absolute freedom. Okay. I don't know, did I answer the question? In my lengthy oration.
And then some. Should we move into Q&A?
Q&A, yes.
So if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
Okay, and I see some notes there. Are there any questions in the notes, in the chat?
No. No
Okay.
questions there, so far at least.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I'm just sorry, my notes. Well, the one that's bright in my mind now is there's a sense of there's not a sense, there's a momentum that is rising up around this acknowledgement of immorality, of what the immorality, and that this no longer can be normal.
Mm-hmm.
And in this kind of stirring of energy, there is anger behind it, there's energy, power,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and distinction of what is Blackness, what are people who have been subject to the boot of capitalism,
Mm-hmm.
people, anyway. But there's a kind of rising up of who these people have been, their culture, a need to lift up a community. And that lifting up of a community, part of my reason for asking is, it's a hard question to say, but is also discriminates.
Yeah.
Because the recognition of the immorality, all of it is having that reaction. And it's like, I can feel it for myself, like an unleashing of a lot of uncovered feeling of, oh, wow, this appeared to me in my life in this way and that way, and I feel it. And, and I think others feel it to lesser or more degrees. And it's just been occupying my mind a little bit around, in relationship to what you're saying, is like the counter reaction to all right, you have room to now say, you know what, this is not okay, and you have larger platforms giving you a voice. There is this avalanche of emotion.
Yeah.
Identity of what people of color is.
Mm-hmm.
And it worries me, actually, as perpetuating another ripple of like, oh, just to be very clear, like, when will success be? Will it be when you have more people of color in the White House or in these roles of power, which is like bananas. And I feel a need to recognize what is success in this movement right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I was curious what you had to say.
Yeah. Of course, I'm not going to claim to have a political or social answer to what you're saying, but the one thing I want to say, to address, is this sense of no more moving forward sense, and I think this should be nurtured. This should be nurtured in the same way that the immorality that has been it's normal, that's what it is, and it's been going on for thousands of years, and then something drastic had to take place to show the ugliness of it, without having to go to that kind of a drastic to that measure of drastic, but more in a sense of the same measure of the same kind of energy has to be put into motion to put an end to this. No more going forward in the future. And most importantly, this energy that we are feeling, we have to be very careful of this energy being misdirected, where that what you are alluding to somewhat in the question about the a relative sense of freedom, which is not real freedom, where a relative sense of addressing the issue when it's not really addressing the issue. That's when we allow this energy, this anger that we are feeling, which is tapping into an energy of, hey, we're not going to go into the future with this stuff. This thing has to be taken care of right here, right now. And that energy that you feel is at the ready to help you achieve that. Be careful of this energy being misdirected by, you know, doing something stupid, something that doesn't really address the thing, where it just shapes it and gives it another form so it can continue in the future. But to be able to be vigilant and to make sure this power that you are tapping into is really being used. And I have to say, maybe the next generation will be even more intelligent, maybe more open, more awoke than we are. But at least we have to exercise the measure of wokeness that we have, so that we don't use this energy in a way that is just mere distraction, but we actually direct it towards having palpable, tangible kind of results. And as far as what the result should be, and we have to also look at, for example, we can't be setting up a system where it is, I mean, for me, it's just absolutely ridiculous that there should be a law written, don't treat Black people this way. I mean, I mean, what? Why should there be such a law? It should just be, don't treat people this way, right? There shouldn't have to be a special distinction. But in order for certain people to move forward, perhaps there have to be a temporary use of such things like that. But we have to understand that it's temporary. It's not something to be going forward. In Singapore, for example, as an example of multiculturalism, and to the extent that they're able to practice it, they have sort of like mandated laws where this percentage of, okay, when there's this population, there's this percentage of this people in the population, this percent of this person. Okay, in every single institution, there have to be this kind of representation in each institution. In this housing place that the government built, there has to be represented by this, this ratio of these different kind of group making it there. And perhaps it's something that might be necessary to address something that is immediate, but there must be continuous effort to make sure that we don't need to have to do that anymore. We don't have to say, oh, that's a person of color. Okay, that's the 15% now. Okay, are we making the 15%? It shouldn't have to be that way. But it's something that we have to work towards. We have to understand that, okay, this is immediate, this is gradual, this is over time, and eventually the utopia, maybe, I don't know, 10 generations from now, where there won't be no special rules where do not discriminate against this or that group. I mean, this is very silly. No, nature gave us our freedom to be, and who are you to tell me I don't have the freedom to do this and that? What gave you your freedom to do what you're doing? Where did it come from? Okay. We have to have patience. That's the one thing, and it's an absolute necessary ingredient in this. We have to have patience. We have to have patience with what you might call systemic patience, but not patience in a sense of, okay, I'm allowing you to transform yourself into just a different look, but it's the same thing continuing in the future. Not that kind of patience. We shouldn't have any patience with that. But we should have patience with understanding that it will take time. We should be willing to endure the time, because we see the change is absolutely necessary, and it's worth the patience. We should be able to have patience to be able to communicate with a person, with a community who have been conditioned in such a way that that you could say they're socially poisoned. We have to learn to have patience with them, and they have to have patience with us, because in their eyes we are the poison. We have to understand that, and I would say the first thing to establish is that the idea, frame it in some way or another, we're all cows looking for freedom. Okay, we're all just cows looking for freedom. Okay, we established that. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay, you think this will get you to freedom. This is what it does to me when you do that. Oh, okay, now I understand. Oh, this is what it does to me when you do that. Oh, I understand. Okay. Understanding this, then we will be able to move forward. But we have to learn to be patient with each other. Be patient with each other when the patience is moving us towards the ideal. Do not be patient whatsoever when it's just keeping the same thing going. I don't know if I... strangely enough, my personal history, and this is something I have to say, that we are all conditioned by it. Even the person who is doing the conditioning is conditioned by it, if there is such a person, okay? And there is no person, there's just, a group of people mindlessly doing things, thinking that they're in control. I grew up in Haiti. Maybe it was just my young age. I didn't quite see these kinds of things. But in the movies that I saw, the way African Americans were portrayed in the movies, I had built this idea of African Americans. Okay. So when I arrived here, I already had this preconditioned idea of what I'm supposed to expect from African Americans. And I didn't see myself as an African American. I saw myself as a Haitian. Until some years later, that from some eyes kept seeing me as African American, so I became African American in terms of mindset. But still, the conditioning that I received way back then, watching movies, that, oh, those are African Americans, is still there with me. And it's a conditioning that I didn't go and sign up for. It's just, it was force fed. And I have to learn that this is something that I have to get rid of, this conditioning. And it's not just me per se, from the sense of an outsider. The insider and the outsider, we've all received these conditionings. Okay. And we all have to, we're all sick. Okay. We're all sick. And we'll have to understand that from that perspective, we're all sick and we'll have to get cured. Okay. All right. I made it personal. Okay. Well, it's 9:32. Any other questions? Uncomfortable, even? And this is the time to start being uncomfortable.
I have a question. I don't know how uncomfortable it is. But I appreciated what you said about the absoluteness of freedom, and because that has been a confusion in my life for sure about whether these things create each other or not. Mm-hmm. And what came up was, though, like, so bondage does not create freedom, and freedom does not create bondage. We don't need one to have the other. However, do we need the experience of one to experience the other? Just from like a consciousness level, like if all I ever knew was freedom, would I know that that was freedom without tasting bondage or without suffering on some level?
And I have to say, from the very start, that question is coming from a relative perspective. It's not coming from an experience of non-duality, right? In a direct experience of non-duality, that question would not come up. And one of the experiences, an absolute necessary experience, or not necessary in the sense of you got to go get that experience, but you could say that is part, an experience that is part of the experience of freedom, is the knowledge this is freedom. And it's not because necessarily one is the way to express it is this way. When you're walking, you're tired, and you finally rest, and you feel a sense of relief. Is that sense of relief only possible because you were tired? Yeah, it seems that way. There's an experience that it seems that way, and because of it, because of the sense that it seems that way, that's how we keep ourselves in bondage. We keep ourselves in bondage because somewhere we have the sense that we need it in order to experience its absence. But what we have to understand rather is freedom is the complete opposite of bondage. It is the complete non-existence of bondage. When bondage becomes non-existence, that very experience, that very state of being, that's what is referred to as freedom. Now, when you are spiritual, when you're already on the path and you're determined to get to freedom, you will make use of whatever bondage throws at you. But it doesn't mean that that was their purpose in the first place. You're ascribing to them a different function because of the very nature of being empty, because of the very nature of lacking fixed identity, because of the very nature of fluidity of identity, that even bondage can be re-identified, where instead of becoming something that furthers bondage, it can now lead to liberation. It can be used for liberation, but not that it is necessary in order for freedom to be experienced. Yeah. As a skillful use, as a skillful means, this is what you've got. Use what you've got. What you've got is not freedom, so we can't use it to get to freedom. What we've got is bondage. Because of the nature of bondage of being fluid in identity, you can use it. Not that it will lead you to freedom, that's its purpose, that's its nature, but you yourself as a conscious human being seeking freedom, you can use it to achieve your freedom.
Sorry, my silly mind is thinking like 28 days to like a perfect core. Like use your freedom, use your body. 28-day course. Use what you got, girls. All right, do it. Show us how to do it, Llama.
And the thing is to be honest with what we've got, honest with where we are, honest with what we have realized, honestly realized. Okay. When we are not at the real, true realization of recognizing this can lead me to freedom, don't pretend. Don't force yourself. Maybe eventually moving forward, you can use it to reach freedom. But because at the same time, you don't want to be fighting with that part of your mind that is convinced this is only going to lead to further bondage. Don't trick yourself that way. If you feel one day you can, then work towards it. Working towards it means eventually arrive at that place where you can honestly say, yes, this will lead to bondage. This will lead to freedom. Okay. And that means what will lead to freedom? What's the answer to that question? What will lead to freedom?
Whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you can skillfully use, exactly. But be honest with yourself though. Don't say, oh, everything can lead to freedom. I can do whatever I want. When deep inside you, what you're doing is something you know or you're convinced will only lead to further bondage. You're only fooling yourself. You can have a yogi, I don't know. A yogi who actually eats shit and then is able to reach liberation through that. Now, don't go eating shit when you're not at the level of being able to do that. You only get yourself sick because the reality that you have created with shit only creates further bondage. When you're able to free yourself from that, then you can eat shit, you can eat whatever you want, and it will lead to bondage. You can lead you to freedom. You know, I mean, there are many examples of yogis who've done exactly what I've said. Basically to prove they have a student who's reached a level where they need to have some sense knocked out of them. That's knock into them. That's an expression. Knock into them. Have some sense knocked into them, where they're advanced, but they're still holding on tightly to certain identities, and they refuse to let go of it in an unconscious way. And the way to snap them out of it is for the guru to make them eat shit. Don't worry. We don't have to do that.
Do you mean that literally?
I mean that literally, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope I addressed that question to some degree, and I hope it's actually something that you can actually take with you and start using. Okay, it's actually have some sense of being practical, and that's the whole purpose of all this. Okay. Even though I speak a lot in terms of what seems to be theoretical and abstract, I really can't stand things that just remain only useful at the level of abstract. Okay. And the reason that it appears that way, because I don't want to single things out and people getting stuck on those single single examples and not being able to allow their freedom of mind to take other examples into mind. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So now let's do a closing meditation. Right, so let's get rid of this delusion. And the delusion is not that we are separate, but the delusion misunderstanding the appearance of the separateness. Instead of appreciating it, we're not able to appreciate it. We are using it to lead to further bondage when it doesn't have to. All right, bring to mind the sense that you are meditating, and let the very memory take you back into that experience. Let it give you a taste of it again. Remembering how it felt in the body, begin to taste it again in the body. Remembering how it felt in the breath, begin to taste it again in the breath. Remember how it felt in the mind, begin to taste it again in the mind. Noticing any measure of the presence of the signs, rejoice and stabilize with a nice deep breath, in through the nose, out the mouth. And there's a sense of making a contact, a direct contact with some experience that seems to have flashed, and just stay with that, even the memory of that. Stay with that memory. If it feels like something you heard, keep hearing it. Turn your hearing towards it. If it felt like something you saw, keep your vision towards it. If it felt like something that was felt in a tactile way, keep directing your sense of touch towards it. In whatever way it seemed to have presented itself, keep directing yourself in that direction. And feel yourself sort of being absorbed into it, and allow that to take place. Trust it. Know it's to be the very nature that you seek. And again, see us sitting around each other in a circle. And feel the collective sense of us, in that what seemed to be an abstract us, but at the same time seems to be an actual thing that we can point to. Just say us, and then what comes up, and allow it to have that sense of presence in the very center of our circle. And knowing that collective us is our potential as individuals and as a collective. In the same way that you're allowing yourself to be absorbed into that sense of seeing, that taste of that nature, allow yourself to be absorbed into that sense of that us. until you arrive at the taste, and then it will become more and more steady, where the sense of being an individual and the sense of being a collective are not contradictory. And we are touching our common humanity, our essence. And let that sense of the collective us expand in its radiance until there exists only the presence of that. And let it continue to expand, including more and more into its collective sense. Your neighbors, your friends, your family. The grocer, the delivery person, the Lyft driver, the barista, the strangers on the street. It doesn't matter if they recognize the sense of collective us. The main thing is for us to recognize it and to radiate that sense of us. And let it continue and let it bring into the sense of collective us, not just humans, but the mountains, the sky, the rivers, the oceans. And once it envelops, embraces all life, now say us and feel it. Us. Us. And that light begins to reduce, reduce. And it goes back to being in the very center of us. And from that center, the entire collective in its mysterious, unconventional, inconceivable way, in its entirety, enters each one of us. Make a dedication, feeling in whatever way you feel is the signature of the meditation, dedicated. 给我第一教训，所能也是创造性，所能也是那种为当把过年 America topar show. Get ready to come out of the meditation with joy, witnessing yourself in the depth, in whatever depth you are in the meditation. Make the intention to arise. With that intention, a nice deep breath, feel, hear it in the nose, out the mouth. And deliberately, consciously reconnect with your immediate surroundings through your sense of touch, your sense of hearing, your sense of sight. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Phuntsok.
And thank you. If you have a topic that you would like us to treat, please email Emmett.
Definitely email me. Otherwise, I also just put Phuntsok's Patreon page, as well as his Venmo handle on the chat. So on the Patreon page, you can submit a message, and that'll end up going to me if there's any topics you want to discuss here, or have Phuntsok help us dive a little bit more deeply on. And then, of course, all of these are recorded and go up on the Patreon page the morning after. So if there's a friend that you think would particularly get something out of listening to this talk or any of the previous talks, they're up there as well. It's great to see all you guys. Thank you, Phuntsok, so much for teaching.
Thank you.
She's here.